So in high school, I worked kids' birthday parties. The place was basically a giant gym, and gymnastics/dance classes were also held there. One day, I came in, and one of the girls I worked with, who was very spiritual and very religious, was totally freaked out. During the gymnastics class she taught that morning, one of the kids was staring up at the ceiling. When she asked the kid what he was doing, he said, "There's a little boy up there," and pointed at the ceiling. Strange enough, but whatever. Kids are weird. Later, two girls who were working a birthday party before mine came out of the gym and were visibly shaken. A pair of 5-year-old twins went down a slide and then stared at the ceiling. They both said that there was a little boy up there, in the same spot on the ceiling that the kid from the morning gymnastics class. We all went in and inspected the ceiling. Of course, it was just a regular, gray, warehouse-wise ceiling. But we were all super freaked out at that point. During my party, I was pushing a little boy on the giant swing we had in the gym. He, too, began to stare at the ceiling. He said directly to my face, "Hey, there's a little boy up there." We told all of our coworkers and managers about the 3 separate experiences we had today with children from different parties and classes seeing a little boy on the ceiling. The next day, we had downtime between parties, and nobody was in the gym. There are cameras in the gym that allow parents to see their children playing from the lobby. My manager called us out of the break room. "Guys, check this out." We come out and see the screen, which is streaming from the gym, showing that giant swing going back and forth. Nobody's in there. It's just the swing going. I like to think that the ghost was truly a little boy who just wanted to play, and he finally got to go on the swing. Could be worse. When I was in my late 20s, I was dating my girlfriend, soon-to-be wife. We had been together for a while. One summer, July 3rd, her sister was abducted and killed by a group of 6 men. All the men were eventually caught and tried. The trials and the aftermath for the family were devastating and debilitating for them for many, many years. Fast forward 3 months, after the funeral, I arrived at my girlfriend's house to wait for her to get off from her job as a nurse at a local hospital. Neither of her parents were home. Just me, alone in the house. So I went into the family room, turned on the TV, sat down in the couch, got comfortable and began to watch. Clear as a bell, I heard my girlfriend's sister's voice in my right ear, just off my shoulder, call my name. I turned to look at the seat next to me, and of course there was nobody there. I stared at the spot in the couch next to me for a long while. Feeling a bit uneasy, I turned off the TV and went outside to wait on the porch. My uncle's house out on a very eastern part of New York was said to be haunted due to the family that used to own it in the 1800s decided not to give it to the stableman and sold it instead. He and the maid were said to have haunted the place. We always used to joke that you would hear people or things moving at night, but since the house is so old, we used to just laugh it off. My uncle's friend had her and her sister stay over the house one night, and the friend noticed a maid bringing towels down the stairs when she woke. She saw the maid again, bringing what looked like a percolator, down the stairs. She was so impressed by my uncle hiring staff. He is a neurologist in NYC, so he had a habit of spending a little bit extra. She went back to bed and woke up later downstairs to see my uncle and his friend just chatting. She asked where the maid went and she thought that the maid was cooking breakfast. My uncle had no idea what she was talking about and asked what she looked like. The sister explained and he laughed. Walked her to the living room and pointed to an old picture. She said that was the woman. My uncle replied, "Yeah, she has been dead for about 100 years. I lived in an old, haunted house in college. Things got so weird that everyone moved out except for me and one roommate. Here's a few. I woke up at 3 a.m. because my roommate's door kept opening and slamming shut. From bed, I yelled for him to stop only to realize I was the only one home that weekend. As soon as I yelled, the slamming stopped, but the hippie beads I had hanging outside my closed door began to sway perfectly, yet violently, against the door frame, for a half hour, while I debated if I should pop out my air condition unit and jump out of the window. I laid in the fetal position in bed till it stopped. I woke up at 3 a.m., alone again, hearing the Nintendo in the back porch playing loudly. I figured a drunk kid came in and started playing. I grabbed a bat and walked towards the back of the house as the music got louder and louder. As soon as I opened the door, it was completely quiet. Mind you, it was loud enough to wake me up. I had friends over and told them the house was haunted. No one believed me, so I asked the ghost to do anything to prove it was there. As soon as I asked, all the lights in the house began flickering for about a minute straight. This was the middle of the day. Everyone witnessed it. Almost everyone who stayed at my house had sleep paralysis at least once in the house. Every time something spooky happened, the house would smell like old lady, flowery, strong perfume. This house had a door built into the flooring that led to the basement. We always had a rug covering it up so no one knew it was there. Things would constantly go missing in the house, and turning up in the basement. This house had a coal chute from when it was heated by coal back in the day. Missing stuff would always be placed on the chute for us to come and get. Roommate had some issues. Once while playing video games late at night he saw a mist kind of hovering from the kitchen then move into the bathroom. The bathroom had a trap door that led to the attic. That's where we figured the old lady ghost used to like to hang out. Roommate was up late, he went to go lock the doors and turn off lights. When he turned his back on the room and walked to the door, someone breathed into his ear HAA. He thought it was me, I was sleeping, he turned around, pissed himself, and ran to his room. He was too afraid to come out and turn off lights and TV. Loud thumps in attic at all hours. For peace of mind, we told ourselves squirrels must have gotten in there. Voices would wake us up in the middle of the night. I spent many mornings on the front porch waiting for the sun to come up before I went back in the house. Coincidentally, I had a friend years later that rented from the same landlord, same town, different house, where he and all of his roommates moved out because that house was also haunted. I didn't think it was too weird, until he was telling me that when all of the weird stuff happened, it was accompanied by old lady, flowery, stanky perfume. Also, a lot of people had sleep paralysis in that house as well. When I was younger, I used to take naps upstairs, but by the time I was 8 years old I absolutely refused to go upstairs. The upstairs had 2 large closets, attics. They ran from one side of the upstairs all the way to the other side on both sides. It was essentially a crawl space that was maybe 30 feet long. It started one day when a friend and I went crawling from one side to the other with flashlights like kids normally do. Then I saw a girl, sitting there, in the corner acting like she wanted to play with us. I know a lot of people say when they see a ghost they aren't scared, just interested. Nope, I was beyond terrified. This girl looked normal, had blonde hair, a nice dress and seemed friendly. I stayed silent, kept crawling behind my friend and got out of the closet. Told him what I saw in there. He said he didn't see it, but felt like he didn't want to go back in. Then my parents would occasionally send me upstairs to get something, and when I would get up there I would see the doors swing open, as if they were trying to get me to come inside. I would lose toys and wouldn't be able to find them anywhere. Suddenly, my parents would be fishing out Christmas presents out of the attic and we would find some of my toys in there. I remember being 8 years old. My parents are asleep still in the morning and I leashed up my dog to go take on the monster in the attic. My dog, usually up for anything, refused to go off the top step into the attic. My parents never believed me with all the weird things that happened in that house. I would get blamed for things that happened all over the house. Leaving lights on, toys all over. Things I knew I didn't do. Well, anyway we move out of there when I am 10. Not a week passes before the new owners call us up and ask if the house is haunted. Their daughter sleeps upstairs. She says that she has been playing with a blonde-haired girl at night. My parents laughed at how crazy these new homeowners must be. To make an already long story short, the girl started appearing in other parts of the house for them. They kept in contact with us. They would look over while watching TV and see the girl sitting on their daughter's lap, etc. They looked up on the computer the past owners of the house, found an old dressmaker that lived there and yep, a picture of the little girl wearing one of the lady's dresses. The family that moved in there were absolutely torn apart by the events. Got divorced, dad stayed living in the house and ended up taking his own life in that house. I lived in one when I was a teen, along with my parents. Several instances come to mind. We were remodeling an old farmhouse and had been there a couple of months before witnessing anything. One day I was underneath my truck, which was supported by only a jack. Stupid, I know, I was in the middle of working on it, with no good reason to get out at that moment. Suddenly the overwhelming urge to get out from underneath overwhelmed me. No sooner than I got out, the truck fell to the ground, the jack had slipped. Freaked dad out, he thought I was under it. When mom got home, we mentioned it, and she started crying, sobbing pretty hard. It turns out the previous owner died in the driveway, under a vehicle, in that spot. I would often see moving shadows, and strangely hear music from the upstairs area. The windows of the old house were cocked shut, and blackbirds would often get caught between the panes. We ended up replacing all the windows, but we had to break 3 inside panes to get them out. One of the more disturbing things happened when my mother was cooking breakfast. She turned away to get something out of the cabinet, and when she turned back around, all the forks set out were bent straight up. So 2 weeks before we moved, my dad and I toured our house and I noticed this guy was painting the water heater, which I thought was weird AF, but I was like 10 so whatever. Anyway, we moved in on a Wednesday and my parents let me stay home from school until the following Monday and preoccupied me with coloring books and a new dollhouse. In my brand new crayons pack, there literally wasn't a blue crayon, like it was a 64 pack, but there were only 63 crayons in it. One day I went downstairs into the basement and my blue crayon was next to the hot water heater and scribbled on there it said, "Hi Fitner 6, Kevin." I was so confused. I started school and my new classmates were like, "OMG, do you live in Kevin's house? Your house is gonna be haunted." It turned out that Kevin was a little 8-year-old boy that lived in our house prior to us and he got hit by a car in the front yard. He would write notes if you left out a pen and paper, open and close doors, adjust the thermostat, the kind where you had to turn a knob, and always turn on Christmas music when it was that time of year, smiley face. We had a swing set in the backyard, and even on the hottest, calmest days of summer, only the left swing would be moving back and forth. We had this dumb cat that I would lock in my bedroom at night, and every morning, my parents would open the door and let him out, then close it back. One night I woke up and the cat was meowing at the door, and it woke me up, but the door opened and the cat hissed and ran out really fast. I asked my mom the next morning why they didn't close my door, and they said they didn't open it. The last story is when I was very upset and nearly suicidal one year during Christmas break. The police just randomly showed up at my house. The policeman said he was patrolling our neighborhood and felt like something was wrong at our house. I'm absolutely certain Kevin had something to do with it. I grew up with a cat, Boots, who was just a year my junior. Boots was motivated only by food and spent his later years sleeping on my parents' bed until someone came home. Then he'd jump off the bed, with a thunk-thunk of his front and back paws hitting the ground, and run to his food bowl to beg. He had to be put down when I was 18. My parents moved out of my childhood home during my first year of college. I went back a few times before it sold. Every time, I was certain I felt a cat's presence. Like, I'd hesitate my step because I was sure a cat just walked under my legs kind of thing. Also, upon walking in, I'd always hear a thunk-thunk, like Boots jumping down to beg for food. My mom and I went back for the last day my family would ever be in that home, and I told her on the way what I'd experienced. To my surprise, she had the exact same feeling. When we walked into the house, thunk-thunk, we exchanged shocked glances, and confirmed we both heard it. I went and sat in my empty room while my mom got the final things together, and while my eyes were closed I had to force myself to not pet a cat that I felt walk up to me, because I knew logically he wasn't there. Before leaving, we stood in the hallway outside my parents' bedroom, hugged each other, and cried, saying bye to my first home. I said I thought Boots was still around, and suggested we take his spirit to the new house. She agreed, so she called out, "Bootsy," from my parents' room. Thunk-thunk. We both heard it. I don't think he came with us. He never liked car rides. But I hope the owners since us have enjoyed their ghost kitty. He was a good boy. For context, I believe, to this day, that the vast majority of, not all, paranormal videos and photos have a plausible explanation outside of the paranormal. This means that these videos and photos can be easily explained away as either CG, poor quality cameras, pareidolia, or as outright fakes. Needless to say, I do believe that there still can be paranormal shit that happens. However, at the time when this happened about 8 years ago and when I didn't believe in ghosts as much, my family and I were staying at the Fort Garry Hotel in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I had a few spare moments and decided to explore the hotel because it is absolutely beautiful. I got lost as I usually do in buildings since I get directionally challenged the moment I step into one. Anyways, I happened to run into someone that looked like they worked for the hotel but weren't house cleaning or a clerk, so I was unsure of their position or job. I asked for directions back to the lobby since I had to meet my family in a few minutes. The moment I arrived in the lobby and walked past the front desk, a clerk and a security guard were staring at me in shock and pale faces. The security guard asked me who I was talking with earlier for the directions back to the lobby. I told him I thought it was someone who worked at the hotel. Well, wouldn't you know, it turns out that floor I was on, I can't remember it for the life of me, has a bunch of paranormal shit that goes on regularly. I don't know if he was supposed to, but the security guard showed me the footage he had just seen. The person I was talking with never appeared on the security feed even though they should have been in plain view. It was super creepy because I had shaken this person's hand for some reason and the footage just showed me shaking hands with the air. The person appeared in front of me as any other person would have. When I touched their hand it felt like any squishy person would normally, and yet they never showed up on the footage. There was no way I could have blocked out the person from view of the camera either, as I'm only 5 feet 6 inches. The security guard even pulled up a second angle for further proof. No one else believes me despite the footage. To this day, I still don't know how to explain it. A couple years ago, I was 23 at the time, I was still living with my parents. I was up upstairs in my bedroom hanging out in my room and watching TV. I was on the phone with my friend at the time, and while I was on the phone I exited my room and went downstairs to have a cigarette. The only other person in my parents' house that day was my dad, who later I found out was asleep in his room on the main level. Anyway, I was gone for about 7 minutes and I walked back upstairs and entered my bedroom. I was still on the phone at the time, and I walked towards my bed and sat down. Eventually, after 20 seconds or so, I glanced back up to play my TV, and there at the end of my bed was a piece of paper sticking up from the base. I just remember not understanding what I was seeing, and never in my life have I so quickly dropped dead silent. I say, drop dead silent, in a way to try and explain what it feels like when you're coming to terms with something your brain isn't ready or fully capable of understanding. I just remember going, "Nate," and he kept saying, what, and I could hardly speak. I quickly said I'll call him back and immediately took out my phone and took a picture. I took a picture before doing anything else, before I even studied what the piece of paper was, before I did anything at all I took a picture. I took a picture because I couldn't believe my eyes. I don't know how it got there, why it was placed the way it was, and why it looked the way it did. I'm getting goosebumps right now. Anyway, it was an old economics paper of mine talking about the government and the divide our two-party system creates in America. I wrote this econ paper 3 years prior in a college intro to econ course. There was originally 2 pages to it, but it was missing its second page. The edges of the page were burnt, and there was a big yellow triangle that almost looked like it was highlighted on, smack dab in the middle of the page. It almost looked luminescent, or like a dollar bill does. Anyhow, it absolutely scared the fuck out of me. That paper had to have been in my closet stacked away with all my other schoolwork, and now it was ripped from the other page and was placed at the edge of my bed, sticking upright, for me to see. I was gone for only 7 minutes. Nobody could have done that. It was absolutely impossible. Shortly after that bizarre situation occurred, I dodged the hell out of my parents' house and went to a hotel with a friend of mine. The second part of the story is just as scary, but I don't even want to get into that right now. Anyway, I still wish I knew what it meant. I can't tell if it was good or bad. I don't know what the symbolism was, why the paper had weird burns around the edges, the large luminescent triangle meant. I still don't know why or how, but my concept and understanding of the world has changed ever since. I was only gone for 7 minutes. This probably doesn't fall under extremely distressing, but I'll put my story down. The earliest memory I have is of an experience with an apparition. Based on what I know, I was no more than 3 years old when I saw it. Parents didn't believe me, always had some explanation for me. We moved houses and tiny things would happen here and there, but once again my parents always chalked it up to an overactive imagination. There was a full-body apparition that both my brother and I saw as it walked past a doorway while we were home alone. Fast forward to getting married and moving into an old apartment. Things start to heat up a little bit. Bins would get flipped over and the contents dumped on the floor. Things would slide off of the back of our vanity, about 18 inches deep, and fly 3 feet to hit the footboard of our bed, not gently. More activity than I had experienced before, but still not a lot. We moved into an almost brand new apartment, and while 1 or 2 things happened, things calmed down significantly. Then we moved in with my in-laws while my husband went to school. Cue the real events. The house would go through periods of high activity, particularly centered around me. My husband would hear me calling him from another room. I wouldn't be calling him. He would see me pass by the bottom of the stairs as he was coming down and would follow me all the way around the corner into the far room, only to dead end with the room empty. I came in from the chicken coop to him upset because I'd been calling him from all over the house. I'd been outside the whole time. It would make one of the dogs go absolutely feral, barking and snarling at nothing. I would have small, soft items thrown at me. I would hear clapping and walking around the house, and the dogs would go looking for what made the noise. Here's the main story. My husband was working nights and I was home alone on the farm while the in-laws were out of state on a trip. One of the dogs goes into an episode, staring at nothing in the middle of the living room, absolutely losing it. Rabid dog. I can't get her to calm down. Usually a light touch on the back will snap her out of it, but I could not call her off this time. I finally go to my room to take a breather and I hear her stop. Maybe 15 minutes later she's at it again. I can't describe how terrifying it is to see her like this. Like I said, absolutely feral. I go halfway up the stairs and am talking to her through the banister. Finally get her to come over to me and stop barking. She keeps looking next to me at the top of the stairs, then a huge slam on the baby gate there happens, rattling the gate and the banister. I ignore it cause I've heard that's the best thing to do when something's right next to you. The dog barks, but I get her stopped again. Then right in my line of sight I see a pen slid forcefully off the table, flying multiple feet before hitting the ground. The dog immediately runs to attack, and goes into another fit looking at something next to the table. I start to lose it, immediately go back downstairs to my bedroom. I sit on my bed next to my cat napping there. He stands up and comes to me since I'm upset and crying. I hear the dog move back to barking in the living room, closer to my room. A minute later my cat turns to look at the doorway. His back raises up, ears pinned back, and his hair stands on end looking straight at the doorway. I ran out of the house at that point. That was the worst it ever got. I have lots of other little stories though. I just moved into a brand new house and, knock on wood, nothing yet. I refuse to talk about paranormal activity allowed in any home I stay in, and I think subconsciously I pushed myself to only move into a new construction for fear of stirring anything in an existing house up. With what I know about the experiences through my life compared with where I was staying, I've kind of begun to think I might be a poltergeist. A new construction home was the only place I felt safe moving into. So while my story isn't to the level of a horror movie, I'm happy to be out of old houses and apartments. In 2011 I was studying abroad in Morocco. We were staying in a riad in the Medina of Marrakesh with tall, ornate windows. I had one roommate who was already asleep this night. I thought I saw her sitting up in the bed next to me wearing all white. Suddenly I saw a white, hazy thing vaguely shaped like a person floating above me next to the big windows. I was so scared I went in the bathroom, turned the light on and stayed in the bathtub all night. My roommate didn't see anything. I lived in a house that seemed to be haunted by doppelgangers. Every event that happened never involved some mysterious figure, but a known person being in a place where they should not have been. Here are a few examples. I was a teenager at the time, and I was instant messaging my GF at the time with my webcam turned on. I had the viewer up so that I could see myself in the webcam. Behind me, there was the stairs leading up, left of camera view, and the entrance to the living room, right of camera view. My younger sister would typically fall asleep every night on the couch in front of the TV and make her way up to bed in the middle of the night. At one point in my webcam view, I saw my sister leave the living room and go up the stairs. The thing that struck me as odd was that I didn't hear anything. It was an older Victorian house, so the wooden floor and stairs were loud AF. Without saying anything to my GF, I got up and looked into the living room, and there was my sister passed out on the couch. I sat back down and asked my GF if she had seen anything in my camera. She said, "Yeah, I just saw your sister go upstairs." My family was all getting ready to go somewhere. I was sitting in the car with my mom and we were waiting on my sister who was still in the house. After a bit she comes out and gets in the car and just looks at me like, "WTF?" I ask her what's wrong and she says that just before she walked out of the house she thought I was still inside, so she yelled up the stairs, 1LT_0 bias. "We're leaving," and apparently, I yelled back, "Okay, I'll be down in a minute." Edit. Some more examples since many people have asked. I did put some of these in a response lower, but I'll add them here for visibility. My mom woke up to someone tapping her foot and she said someone was standing at the end of her bed who faded out after a couple seconds. She said it looked like me. I had an encounter where I woke up and felt like someone was under my covers laying up against me. When I said something, my blanket visibly deflated and I no longer felt anything. I include this with doppelgangers because though I didn't see what I felt under the blanket, it laid like my GF would have laid against me. When I was 22, I was in the military and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It still took like a year after the diagnosis to separate from the military, but I went home on leave for the holidays about a month after the diagnosis. Anyone that has insulin-dependent diabetes typically carries around some sort of kit. Mine is black zip-up pouch and it has a glucometer, insulin pen, needles, and alcohol pads. Right after I left home to head back from leave, my mom texts me to ask if I'm missing my diabetic kit. I look, and I'm not. She sends me a picture of a diabetic kit and asks if I know it. I've never seen this kit before in my life. Apparently, my sister went into her bedroom and discovered it outside of her window propped up like someone had set it there. Oh, also, her bedroom is on the second floor. Nobody else we know has diabetes.